Our bodies are these multidimensional, highly intelligent antennas, and they are picking up information all around us. And for me, all the practices have to originate in the body. They have to originate in the flesh.
Hello, and welcome to the Conscious Communion podcast, where we traverse through the inner dwellings of the human experience through conversation. I'm your host, Danae. Join me as we explore the interconnection of creativity and community. Harty began her interest in spiritual studies in 1996 with the Egyptian Book of the Dead, palmistry, and the elemental witchcraft of Scott Cunningham. Growing up on a horse farm in rural western New York, she spent most of her early childhood in the forest, alone, learning to hear the song of the land. Her life would be one of many travels and experiences, rubbing elbows with all walks of life, from Fortune 500 to a summer spent traveling by freight train and hitchhiking with the homeless of America. Today, she is a licensed acupuncturist, myofascial bodyworker, and a dedicated Taoist under the teaching of Master Zhongxian Wu. She is an archaeoastronomer, a heretic, a horsewoman, and a person dedicated to the path of the awakened heart. Welcome, Harty. It is so sweet to be here with you.
Likewise, thank you for having me. I'm honored that you want me to come and speak about whatever it is we end up covering.
Yeah, you are truly, from the moment I had the pleasure of meeting you, your spirit was such a resounding sense of calm and reassurance. I just felt this knowing that you knew and you took the time to know yourself so well, and that translates in feeling safe in someone else's sphere. And I so felt that with you. So thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm glad. Yay.
So Harty, just so we can get started, I love this conversation just to kind of get started by what was the catalyst for you in your life to really become interested in how you are sharing this work that you do with the world, with the people that you get to heal and hold space for?
What was the catalyst? Probably, my own journey. I was someone who, from a really young age, being interested in the unseen, being interested in the nature of reality, and being born into a conservative Christian household. The kind of mismatch of personalities, and really, come to realize now I was just terrifying to my parents. Kind of every aspect of me, like, challenged their nature of reality, challenged what they believed. And I was very scary to them. And so I went through the journey of early misdiagnosis, and I was put on a ton of pharmaceutical drugs from a young age. And through my severance from that, my awakening to my own power and my own agency and my own ability to self-heal, it brought me into inspiration to be able to share what I've learned to assist others along that same path. And others, we live in a time when there are so many things stacked against us when it comes to our wellness. And really, it's pretty fucking simple. It's difficult, but it's simple. Like, learning how to become our authentic selves through, like, increasing practices of just self-acceptance, not self-improvement. That whole bullshit, like, that gets you nowhere. There's always a higher peak to climb if you're trying to improve yourself. So really, I've just lived a life where I've just been forced into, kind of deep, I chose a difficult incarnation in a lot of ways, and I'm grateful for it. But I do the work that I do because of my own, like, radical transformation that I've had in my life that I want to share. I just want to share the tools that have worked for me. And they're not for everyone, but for the people they do help, it's great. That's what we're all doing, is learning and sharing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the hope. I think, especially when we can recognize that we are the way showers, and that if we are the way showers, what does that look like to actually move out of our own way to then steward others by just being a space holder in our most authentic, like you said it so beautifully, but it's not chasing the self-improvement. It's really learning and leaning into the self-acceptance piece. It's so necessary.
Yep.
And so it's so different than what we've learned in Western society, especially you coming from a Christian background. I think that conservative America, and there's these tendencies to climb ladders and to feel like we're never fulfilling the roles that capitalism has set before us to fulfill. Hmm. So for you, what do your practices look like on a day-to-day to really draw outside the lines and to continue to steward this radical acceptance piece for yourself?
Well, I mean, it started with yoga 20 years ago. For me, coming into contact with myself has been strictly an embodied experience. You have, like, our bodies are these multidimensional, highly intelligent antennas, and they are picking up information all around us. And for me, all the practices have to originate in the body. They have to originate in the flesh, because the more that we can learn how to listen to that source of information, which is picking up, it's picking up frequencies all around us all the time. You meet a new person, how your body feels in the presence of that person will give you more information than 15 years of knowing them. Like, you really, so it started with yoga. Again, 20 years ago, started with yoga. And then more recently, Qigong. But when it comes to like meeting your authentic self, really, I recently, I've read every dang self-help book under the sun, and I just want to make a plug for the one that has really changed my life recently, which is Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender by, I think it's Richard or David Hawkins. I can't remember his first name right now, but that book was really a great summary of kind of more straightforward, like a summary of all the other books, right? All the Eckhart Tolle, all these practices of like observing yourself, his way of putting it together. And really, it's just the daily practice of really observing yourself. He speaks about our emotions are the core of all of our thoughts. They exist as frequencies that live inside of us, right? They're a source of information. So I spent a lot of my life doing a ton of spiritual bypassing, trying to be high vibe and just push the shit I didn't like out of my mind. And what did that do but accumulate in my body, accumulate in my spirit, and just become these fucking, So his practices of like always observing the visceral sensation of the emotions in your body and seeing what they can teach you. That's the way. That's the way. Just observing, just being in your body every day and your interactions and just witnessing what happens inside. That to me is you could practice, Qigong, meditation, yoga every fucking day. But if you're not doing that as you walk around in the world, you're not going to get anywhere.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like probably in the last year, I've really tried to practice it, but in the last 6 months, I've actually seen it integrate into my life, where I'm actually seeing it play a role in how I interact with everyone else and the world. And holy shit, what a game changer. What a game changer. And then the non-judgment piece, right? Not judging self and just observing and surrendering to the observation itself. It's really juicy. It's so sweet. I've been wanting to read that book, so you just confirmed that this is the next book that I need to read, especially amidst pregnancy. It feels really sweet for now because there is so much that kind of has been coming up in the midst of how can I lean more into just the surrender of it all?
Yep.
So thank you. I love Kristen is actually reading it. So
Yep. It's top 3 best books I've ever read.
Wow.
Yep. Life-changing. Yep. It was like, the last time I had an experience like this was when I was 19 and I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And I remember I was sitting in my house and I put that book down and I looked up and looked around the room and I felt like I was on drugs because I was, for the first time in my life, fully present and everything looked different. My whole world looked 3-dimensional for the first fucking time in my life. And I was blown away. And this was a similar experience. Like, this is a similar kind of like red pill experience of, you know, he talks a lot about the 3 ways that we respond to difficult emotions, right? The first one is deny. Just pretend it's not there. Repress it. The second way is dissociation. We use drugs, we use relationships, we use whatever it is that keeps us out of the here and now. And the third thing that he says is that we share it. And so in our generation, we're like, oh, everybody talk about your problems all the time. This is what we do. And he's like, no, 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 no. That actually, all that does is spread the poison of that experience to the people around you. And then the rest becomes repressed. You're not actually processing it. And I was like, what? Oh my God. And of course, there's exceptions to that. He's like, really traumatic things, right? Like my clients that are veterans that have, like, you know, watched their friends get blown up, that kind of stuff you need to talk about just so you can take away some of the tension so that you can do the deeper work. Like, really traumatic things need to be discussed, but the day-to-day BS that we go around, you know, kind of like gossiping, you know, processing with our friends, like, it's ultimately not going to heal us. We have to do the inner work.
Wow. Oh, can't wait to dive into that. That sounds truly transformational. Just like, I mean, yeah. And I think moving, which you just did not too long ago, what an opportunity to lean into that. Not having community, just kind of going into the unknown, putting yourself into a new situation. It's a perfect opportunity to really be rebirthed from the inside out. So can you share a little bit about your choice to move from Portland to Sisters and then what that experience has been like for you thus far?
So, I spent my early 20s in Portland as a polyamorous anarchist. I had just a really wild community of bike punk friends, and it was great. Portland 2005 was a really magical place to live, and it was right after I lived in Egypt, where I couldn't show my elbows without being followed by hordes of men. So joining that community where we were riding tall bikes naked through downtown Portland in the middle of the day all the time and just getting to be wild and free, like, Portland really represented like a place of freedom for me. But I left Portland in 2007 and spent my 20s in Montana. So when I came back to Portland for graduate school, my plan was to move back to Montana when I was done. But I graduated at the end of 2019, so right before the pandemic hit. And the pandemic kept me. And, you know, I wasn't living in Portland proper. I was living in a roundhouse in the forest half an hour south. Like, I had a really beautiful setup there. I had a dream life. I was paying nothing for a 2-bedroom, fireplace, bathtub, wraparound porch in the forest, off the grid. I mean, really, like, I was living not off grid, but outside of cell range. I mean, it really was a little Shangri-La, but I had to work in Portland to get by. And I never wanted to stay in Portland. Portland, when I came back in 2016, was a very unrecognizable place from 2005, and it just wasn't my vibe anymore, you know? So I started to make community down in Sisters, and I made that the goal. It's like, I want to move to the Oregon desert. My heart, you know, different kinds of landscapes appeal to us for different reasons. I have a real deep love for the ponderosas and the juniper and the high desert in general. The dryness is good for my constitution, good for my body. And, you know, we get 2 more months of sunlight down here, so that also impacts the spirit. So I really just started working conscious manifestation. You know, in January of last year, I put a Oregon Desert book on my altar and just started practicing conscious manifestation, like what it would smell like, what it would feel like in my body to relocate down here. And by March, dear friend Kate Kavanaugh reached out to me and said, I found you the perfect place to live. And my dream was to be, the specific thing I was manifesting was living on a horse farm in a ponderosa forest. That's like what my plan was. So the first place I lived was a horse farm in town. And that wasn't an ideal living situation for a couple different reasons. And, you know, it didn't line up right away. Like right away, my first move here, like first it was very difficult. I questioned myself. I questioned my guides. You know, I mean, I was going back and forth about my move because my dream, my home was so dreamy. I really had the most perfect living situation where I was. But again, it was out of alignment. I had no sense of real community. I did not like Portland. But my house was perfect, you know? So I really went back and forth about it until, you know, my grandfather, who died when I was 13, showed up at the foot of my bed one night. And I don't know what he said to me, but I woke up with the memory of him appearing in his cowboy hat and telling me, you got to get to Portland and move to Sisters. And I woke up the next morning like, okay, I'm going to take this new house. I'm going to go. And it was hard at first, like I said. And I really questioned myself. I questioned everything. And, you know, if just looking back on that now with how things are, you know, that was really end of summer that I was just feeling really defeated. And now like my life has just completely opened up. And it's just that trust. It's just that trust. Like if you make the prayer every day, like may everything that is supposed to happen in just the way that it's supposed to. Things come to me that are for me and things that are not for me stay away, and just live in that knowing of that truth. Things just end up working out. Like I'm happier now than I've been in, I don't even know how long. And it's the landscape, you know, I sense, so I was living in that first situation, which was not ideal. And I really had, you know, again, I hadn't started reading this book yet, the Letting Go book yet. But I was really feeling victimized. I was really feeling stuck in my living situation, financially, emotionally. I was really running my victim narrative about this. And then one day I was like, no, I'm not stuck here. And I reached out to my girlfriends and I was like, guys, I need to find a new place to live in Sisters. I had no money. I really was very, very poor at this point. And within a few days, two of my girlfriends reached out with different housing opportunities. One was a 40-acre horse farm outside of Sisters on Ponderosa Forest. Came up here, signed the lease the next day, moved out. Everything just lined up, and I've been out here since October. And I mean, I'm just surrounded by the most beautiful land. I can see the Sisters Mountains over the trees from our front porch, and we're backed up against thousands of acres of BLM land, so I can just walk into the forest and get lost out my back door. Yeah, and I could have gotten trapped in my, like, I'm stuck, I can't go anywhere. You know, the fucking stories, the ways that we give away our power by getting stuck in the victim narrative. Like, we all carry the victim archetype. It's right there. But when we let it, like, take control because of our external circumstances, we just get ourselves... I got unstuck within a week. You know, it's like, all you have to do is be like, I don't have to be stuck.
Totally. Yes. And it's just that surrender piece. Yeah. It's the observing, it's the witnessing, letting ourselves feel it. It's not that we negate the experience. We feel it, but we don't allow it to control us. That's the big thing. I think victim mentality has a tendency to just, we create that constriction, right?
Victim becomes victor, right? Like that's the whole thing, light and shadow aspect. And so it's about taking accountability.
Oof. Yeah. Taking accountability. Yeah. Taking accountability for how we're playing a part in it, right? Like we are absolutely playing a role when that goes down. When that story comes back up and we allow it to come back up and rule us. Yeah, we got to take accountability. The land looks good on you. I just see you so lit up, and I would love for you to just share, because you are a steward to the land. One, you are also in such deep connection with the horses that you get to be with, tend to, and love on. So, how has living in the desert impacted your spirit as a steward to the land and as someone who is so deeply connected to the land itself?
Well, I think that there's just something to be said for matching spirit to land. And I really, my good friend Alyssa Donato is an astrocartographer. Like, there's a whole astrology system based around location and spirit. For me, this is a landscape, and this has always been the case, even in Montana. As a little girl, like, I grew up in New York, but we'd go out west to our family cabin that my mom and her siblings all share. They have a family cabin outside of Cody, so on the edge of the Absarokas and the Shoshone. And I always knew that I'd end up out west. In fifth grade, my social studies teacher said to me, "Harty, I think you need to move out west." And she said that to me, and I was like, "How did she know that?" And then I look at photos of myself in those days, and I'm wearing wolf t-shirts and turquoise necklaces, and I'm like, "Okay, like, I already looked." She knew what she was doing, and my grandparents also, like, I've got family history in Tacoma. Lots of people during the gold rush, like, that's in my blood, it's in my history. We're all East Coasters, but I've got, my grandparents really loved to cowboy up, and they're all horse people. Horses have been in our family forever. I mean, my mom's a riding instructor, my grandmother was a riding instructor. Horses, like, I say, like, my fetus was formed on the back of a horse. My mom was riding up until they told her, "You absolutely can't anymore." So places like Sisters, for me, I mean, basically the first time I came here, it was just so clear. It's like, this is home. There's places that you go to where you just feel more yourself. And that's all of Central Oregon and the Oregon Outback region too, south of here, really speaks to me. And it's the smell of the air. It's the feeling of the air. And I can't even really describe it, but, just being silent in nature, I just get more messages. More reveals itself to me because I just feel so much more myself. And I don't know if that's from, past life stuff or whatever it is. There's just certain landscapes that just speak to your heart. And I've always just felt more solidly myself when I've come down here for visits to see friends or traveling. And I made it a reality. And now the path of, like, self-actualization has been amplified by just me being here. Qigong was, I spent a lot of time in the woods in childhood and a lot of times connecting with the land. And really, I go back to this one experience as the most prevalent one. Like, I was a kid walking around hearing and seeing things, left. But in my adult years, like, I'd been kind of off the spiritual path for a couple of years. I was just partying a lot. I was, again, a polyamorous Portland punk, and I had 5 boyfriends, and I went home to visit my parents, and I had just broken my hand from riding my bike drunk and punching the pavement when I crashed, and I broke my hand. Gave myself a boxer's fracture, literally punched the pavement, and they put me on a bunch of painkillers, right? And so I'm hooked on painkillers because naturally, even the pain stopped. I'm like, oh, Percocets are nice. And so I'm in this, this headspace of really coming off of painkillers, not in a good headspace. And I'm fighting with all 5 of the men that I was dating at the time. And I walk into my parents' forest behind their house, and I'm walking down this trail, and I'm just thinking about how mad I am at one of these particular men. I look and I see this stream and this gorgeous ash tree with this tangled roots that were like, it just looked like this tangled forest throne. And so I see it and I'm like, I just want to sit in those roots. And I'd been living in the city of Portland. I had not been out in nature really at all for, probably 6 months. And so I go and I sit in those roots and I'm thinking about this experience, this frustration I have with this man that I'm seeing. And all of a sudden, every single thought that I had about him, I was like, how dare he have another woman over? And then I would hear in my head the most grounded, sagely wisdom in response to every little thing that I was mad at. And I was like, where the fuck is this coming from? I was like, this is not me. And I realized it was the tree. And so I just sat there with this tree and just told this tree about my experience, and every response, it was like being in counsel with an elder who was just giving me every reassuring thing that I could have asked for. And I walked away from that experience being like, huh, well, that was interesting. And since then, my mom, she takes people on trail rides down that path, and she goes, "Oh, that's Harty's tree. It talks to Harty." And I'm like, dang, Mom. So sometimes the land speaks to you directly. Sometimes, really, it's just, again, going back to the body. Your body and the land are not separate from each other. It's just about listening.
My husband and I were talking about that very thing this morning. It's the truest thing I know. It's tomorrow we're going to go like lay on the earth, and I can't freaking wait.
Yeah.
Just like put my back on the earth and just soak it up.
Yeah, we need that so much. I mean, there's so much trying to take us away from Earth right now. The advent of rubber shoes, suddenly we were disconnected from the Schumann resonance that we had been relying on and balancing ourselves with electromagnetically since the beginning of time, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons I wear cowboy boots, not just because it looks cool, but because they're leather soled. So my feet stay connected to the electromagnetic field of the earth, walking around barefoot, even in the middle of the city, doesn't matter. Get your feet on the earth,
Totally. Yeah. And it's so beautiful because I hear you just have this beautiful relationship with the earth, and it really reminds me of a romantic relationship with the earth. And I know that you have really gone through this journey for yourself of what romantic love means for you. And I would love if you could just share a little bit of insight about your current journey with romantic love, because it really is such a testament to knowing yourself on such a deep level and listening to the body like you do.
Yeah. I was a serial monogamist my entire life. I'm talking, I had a boyfriend in first grade and onward. And, being a skinny white girl, reasonably good looking, younger years, it's really easy for that to become the core of your identity. Being pretty and getting rewarded for being pretty. Getting rewarded, getting validation from men was my drug for my entire life. And it was more important to me than anything else forever. And, in my later years, well, I guess not even later years, around 18, I hit rock bottom. I ended up in a trailer park in the Ozarks, engaged to a man. I was 18, he was 27. He was a heroin addict. And we lived with his heroin addict mother and her heroin addict boyfriend, who was 19. She was about 60. And I'm just looking around, surrounded by these people who had goodness. They were kind, they were good people, but they were just so swaddled in addiction and their pain body. And I hit rock bottom at 18, and it forced me to look at how I had gotten there. How did I get to this place? What has been the driving force? And the driving force had been just the desperate desire for male validation and attention and, all of these things. So at 18, I shaved my head, and through a series of other things, I moved to a farm in eastern Washington that was a commune. Well, it was an adult therapeutic community who was run by this couple named Jim and Sherry Brewster, who had run communes in San Francisco throughout the 60s and 70s and had this program, like a sober living farm where they taught you life skills. You had individual therapy, group therapy, yoga. I mean, that was my introduction to yoga, was at this place. So I shaved my head and I took a year's vow of celibacy and sobriety and lived at this farm. And I knew that that was my first thing of like, okay, you're reliance on men is really a big part. The reliance on men, alcohol, and cannabis, the three of them are the same thing. And so that was when my like actual spiritual practice journey started, was when I was 19 on that farm. And it was funny because, I was only there for like a year and a half. And the minute that I got out, sure enough, started drinking again, started dating again, started smoking weed again. And it would take me many, many years to be able to do that again, to take that step away. So I actually got really lucky with this. What happened was in my last relationship ended in January of 2020. And so for years leading up to that, I was like, Harty, you got to be single for a while. You just have to just get back to yourself. You've been in constant relationship your whole life besides that, year at 19. And I just got really lucky that the pandemic happened, because that's totally supported me in my goals of solitude and not having partnership, just to get back to myself, just to get back to my own internal sense of self-worth. And it's really, I think the most important experience with that was in Qigong practice one day. I was in relationship at the time. This was, a year prior. And I was in practice and I had this thought suddenly pop up. And I thought about the smile of one of my professors in my graduate school, who had this really lovely kind of fatherly way about him. And I thought about Joe's smile. His name's Joe Coletto. He's an angel. I thought about his smile. And I thought to myself, why can't the whole world smile like Joe Coletto? And all of a sudden, I was shown this vision of the entire universe as a network of light. And I heard the voice say, everything in the universe is comprised of the same material as Joe Coletto's smile. And I felt this hole open up in my heart, and it was like pulling the plug in the bottom of the ocean. All of a sudden, all of the light, all the things just flashed through my body. I'm like tears streaming down my face, knowing to the core of my being that the entire universe is literally made of this thing that I think I can only get from flirting with a fucking guy? Like, So I had this, this realization, and it would take me a couple years to kind of like really I knew it, like that was revealed as truth. And then it was years of then being alone, being in solitude, and again being shown that this thing, like love, to me, our definition of love is one that is so tangled up in desire and sense of lacking, and people walk around thinking they're a half looking for their other half. And that is just so like the cult of couplehood. And I'm just going to call it the cult of couplehood, because like there is this idea that if we're single, it's because nobody wants us. It's because we're rejected somehow, right? And so the desire to like come into falling in love with yourself and not searching for love anymore, but just literally realizing that at any given moment in time, just standing, sitting here right now, like feeling the sunlight on my skin, can visualize all of my pores opening and the love of the universe just filling my whole being. Because that's literally what it is. It's always on the outside. It's in the stillness. It's in the quiet. It's in the void. Like they say, God is love. I believe that to be true. And it's really just about removing the barriers. And removing the barriers is a constant process of coming into contact with yourself and your authenticity and all the parts about you that are totally deserving of the love of the universe. So, I'm not anti-romance. I'm not anti-love. I'm open to love, right? Like I had to do an exercise for this book that I'm reading with a friend, and it was come up with your dream of your ideal man, right? So I wrote it out, like really, I was like, if any man's gonna come in and like sweep me off my feet, like here's what he's gonna have to bring to the fucking table, right? And if that never happens, holy shit, I'm so happy with my life now. Like I have more love in my life now than I ever have, because I used to give all of myself in my partnerships. I'd start seeing someone, I'd stop seeing my friends, right? Like I would just give and give and give. And it wasn't their fault. I was doing it. That was, and I didn't really know how to love. Like, I thought love was this, like, I had a scarcity concept of love when, like, love is literally the fabric of the goddamn universe. Like, so love is so tangled up in addiction. Like, love is so tangled up in this searching for something external that's literally, like, all around us all the time, just waiting for us to remember and let it in.
Thank you for that beautiful depiction. I can recognize, even for myself, when I first married my husband, we started dating when I was 22. I didn't have the concept of knowing what it really meant to truly love myself until much later. So there was this rewiring that had to be done for the both of us where, we were married still, but were we close during the time that we had to both fall back in love with ourselves? I wouldn't say so, because we were both in our dark night of the soul where we were like, okay, what is the definition of how we love ourselves so that we can be full in ourselves, so that we can come back together? Because it's not partnership, wholesome partnership is not the dependence of another. Absolutely, it's helpful to have somebody that supports you, but it's how can we take accountability for our own actions and what we want to achieve in this life, right? Like, how do we want to fulfill and show up? It's not someone else's job to do that for us. No. Thank you. There was, when you were sharing Joe Cletto and his beautiful smile and that feeling of the universe seeping into your body, I felt an expansion at my heart center just tingle throughout my entire body. And I so felt that. And so much of what you said, even at the end, it's this dependence piece, right? We so often find the dependence in something else outside of ourselves to fulfill some gaping hole within our spirit. And you and I have talked about this off camera before, but I find it so interesting that you two yourself had that struggle with marijuana drinking. I too had that same dependence of feeling like that was such a part of who I was that it brought me so far outside myself of actually coming to terms with accepting myself, surrendering to the emotions, surrendering to the bodily expression. So can you really just, I know that you have that same idea also to psychedelics, right? Like, how do we look within ourselves to not grasp outside? How do you do that for yourself?
By just having constant, honest presence with myself. It can be really easy. So, I mean, marijuana, alcohol, psychedelics of all kinds, they're really great tools. All of them. All of them. These days, cannabis and I have a totally different relationship. She is a teacher that I call in only when I absolutely fucking need her. Because if you just go knocking on your teacher's door every day, they're going to get mad. They're going to yell at you, Like, and I've had enough times, like, THC these days is not what we were smoking in high school, and it can throw people into psychotic break. And I myself, spent a couple summers in a row of smoking too much weed and throwing myself into a depression from the chemical aftermath of that. So I've learned she is a very dear friend when she is warranted, when she is needed, when she is respected as a teacher. Right? So that's it for me. Alcohol was another one. Once I healed my social anxiety, I stopped having a problem with alcohol. That's all it was. I thought I was more likable when I was drunk, because society tells you you're more likable when you're drunk. Like, you're more fun, you're more wild. It's like, I don't need alcohol to be wild. I'm a coyote right now. I don't need that. So, and the thing with psychedelics, that, my first most profound psychedelic experience was at the end of 2019. It was my first time intentionally using psychedelics. And so I did the 5 grams with the, sensory deprivation, like the noise canceling headphones, eye mask. So the only place to go is inwards. This was instructions by Paul Stamets of like, if you take a lot of drugs and you're around other people or anything else, you're going to project onto that. If you want to do an inward journey, you have to go inward. So I did. And it was one of the most profound experiences of my life. However, as I was coming out, my guides who showed up then, who had also shown up to me in 2012, said to me, "It was so great to see you and talk to you, but you don't need to take mushrooms to get here. Just meditate." I was like, shit. You mean I gotta put effort in? I mean, I can just push a button and take the elevator up to see you guys whenever I want, The issue that I'm seeing with psychedelics, and then, okay, this is me like kind of being gatekeepy, fucking old school. I've been on the spiritual path 20 years, guys, but like really, the problem that I'm seeing, okay, one, it's really nice that people who formerly had no connection to spirit are having experiences that open that door. That is valid. That is fucking beautiful. That is great. But what I'm noticing is an increased reliance on that substance in order to have these experiences. So what it's doing is it's taking away our own ability to connect to these forces. Nature will speak to you if you learn how to be quiet and just open and listen. You don't need to take mushrooms to hear the songs of the fucking earth. And I'm watching people give their power away. I'm watching people, and I've had to make the decision in the last year, I will not go to ceremonies where people are even microdosing. If we're going to be doing some kind of sacred thing together, we all have to be on the same wavelength. The problem with psychedelics is that it opens doorways so that if you're sitting with me and we're in circle and you're on psychedelics, your gateway is open. Those of us that are sensitive are also going to have to put up with whatever your shit comes through the door. The other thing is that these just open doors, but you don't know who's coming through. Entities will lie. Spirits will lie. They'll say there's someone that they're not, So it really takes the very well-trained, very attuned person to be able to use those things. They're not for everyone. They were never meant to be given to the entire community. I had too many clients have psychotic breaks. 2 clients of mine had psychotic breaks from psilocybin that were my acupuncture. Because I wasn't told that was even a thing. I had no idea. And I said, hey, I think psilocybin would be good for you. Not knowing that they were going to end up, in some basement in Beaverton, So like, it's being overused. And I think that it's, I think that what that ultimately does is rob us of our power, rob us of our own ability to go to those spaces without those substances. And the other thing it creates is it really strengthens ego. It really strengthens ego. People start to believe I am so powerful because I'm having these visions. But having visions does not mean that you're powerful. Like, you think, like it's... And it can, we saw what happened in the 60s with Charles Manson. People who are on psychedelics, who are under the influence of people seeking power, are easily swayed. So it's dangerous. It's dangerous. I think it has a time and a place. I have a very dear friend in Bend who does ketamine therapy with people, but she's a licensed therapist, right? There's also that difference. You can't have anybody, so... Yeah, it's something I think about a lot because I do think people are giving away their own power to connect with spirit when they become reliant on using psilocybin to open those doors. One last thing is, so this is like really, from a Chinese medicine perspective, psychedelics are the spirit separating from the body, okay? So if we as a society are all seeking deeper embodiment, taking a lot of psychedelics is going to more and more separate you. And the thing is that those of us who've been around a while watching this happen, you can tell the people who do too much psychedelics because they have this look in their eyes. So the heart is manifest through the eyes. The Shen, the aspect of your spirit that changes with your diet and lifestyle, the part of your soul that shines through your eyes is altered, and you can see it. We call it the empty sparkle. They have this outward sheen, but an emptiness inside because part of their spirit is just completely separated from their bodies, still floating in the ethers as they walk through their day to day. So we got to get back in our bodies. We want to get back in our bodies. We can't keep just willy-nilly using that stuff every day or all the time, or even, like just be smart about it. Be sparing. Again, just like me and cannabis, like let the teacher come to you. And many people have experiences of psilocybin saying to them, hey, you're good now. You don't need me anymore. Mm-hmm. Listen to that.
Yes, 1,000%. I had that experience in, I don't know, May or June. And it was it took me back. It really took me by surprise because I had been using it as medicine for, I don't know, 10 years, maybe longer. Pretty not regularly, but as a form of support when I felt like I needed it. And also I realized that there was this searching out for a seeking for something outside of myself. And that's what she told me. You're looking outside of yourself and you don't need to. You have everything you need. And I said, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Humbled real quick. Yeah. She put me in my place real quick. I got a little embarrassed. I felt a little insecure at that point in time, just so fully seen by this very powerful plant that has been with, indigenous communities and so many others for so long, stewarding folks. And also the dependence piece is it is so wildly appropriated, and it's not benefiting us when we only can seek outside of ourselves. Tools, just like you said, right? It's a tool.
It's a tool, should not become a crutch. Yeah.
I think that's a sweet transition because tools, right? Astrology is such a massive tool in so many people's lives. And also, so many people are not aware of what sky astrology even is. Can you please educate us?
Oh, yes. My favorite subject trick. Pissing off the whole internet with the 13. Yeah. So I started studying astrology in 2005. I remember doing my first birth chart, being told I was a sun sign Taurus, and, really, really identifying with that for a long time. Like I am earthy. And because I was a Taurus, I thought that all of my kind of more fiery tendencies were a sign of imbalance. And so I kind of created this little bit of shame that I had when my fiery qualities would come out. I'd feel ashamed, oh, I must be out of balance, right? So it wasn't until, and I don't know when this happened. I have no idea what sparked this, but somebody posted something about sidereal astrology. And they made the statement that the planets are not where astrologers say they are. And I started to look into it. And again, I had been believing in and living by this stuff for, almost 20 years at this point. And suddenly I'm like, wait, everything I've been told, astrology is based in the premise that where things are in the sky impacts our reality. Therefore, I had no idea that where astrologers were telling me things were in the sky was literally not true. Literally not true. Those planets and the sun, they're not in the places that tropical astrology said. So I found out that I was a sun sign Aries, which made so much sense for me. And suddenly owning my fire, being like, oh wait, my fire is actually who I am. It's not a sign of imbalance. This is who I am. I am fiery as fuck. I'm going to own it. So how this happened was Ptolemy, the guy that's, attributed with coming up with the Greek system of astrology. One, he was taking it from older sources. We still don't know what those sources were. We thought it was the Egyptians for a long time, but it looks like it wasn't the Egyptians because those didn't show up in Egypt the very famous map of the zodiacal sky that's in the Temple of Hathor didn't show up in Egypt until Egypt had been ruled by the Greeks for about 200 years. So there's nothing in Egypt about that zodiac before the Greek occupation. So Ptolemy comes up with the map of the 12 constellations in the sky that we all know of. Interestingly, he neglects to list the 13th constellation. If you look at the tropical means solar, based in the pathway of the sun. So the 12 zodiac signs that we look up in the sky, the 12 slices of the pie, right, in the sky. There's actually a 13th sign, Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. So that is just neglected, just ignored from his map. He also made a map that turned the sky into 12 equal slices, right? 12, if you think of the zodiacal wheel as 12 slices of pizza, he made the statement that each constellation takes up exactly 30 degrees, which is not at all the case. There's actually, like, Virgo is a very big constellation in the sky. It actually takes up almost 2 months. And then others are smaller. And so he makes this inaccurate map of the constellations first. And then because he was totally new to astrology, whoever he got this system from had been studying the sky since the beginning of time. He didn't know that every, 1,000 or so years, the sky actually shifts in relation to Earth, like our view of the map. So his 12 zodiac wheel map that he created is 23 degrees off. So since the time of that map that he wrote, the sky has shifted in relation to Earth by 23 degrees. So that map that he made is 23 degrees off, which is almost a full zodiac sign. So there's this whole, someone who I've learned so much from, Cassidy Lee Bell on Instagram. She's an amazing 13 moon astrologer. And there's a whole movement of those of us who are just kind of working under the premise of, hey, zodiac is real. We are impacted by where celestial bodies are in the sky. Why don't we actually look at where celestial bodies are in the sky? Like, why don't we honor, like, the original teachers of this, the people that discovered this impact, by looking at the actual map of the sky? And so, I got an email from Chani Nicholas today about moon in Pisces, and I just want to email her back, but the moon's not in Pisces. How do you explain that? There's those of us who've been, because it's all it is, and all it's going to take is a shift of relationship to the archetypes. That's it. For 2,000 years, people have studied the sky. They've attributed different qualities to different signs. All we have to do is realize that we've been attributing the wrong qualities to the wrong signs. Those qualities and those patterns still exist. It just takes a shift, right? Like people that thought that they were Virgo and they find out that they're actually Leo, right? Like Virgos have kind of a reputation for being kind of controlling, a little bit nitpicky, right? So instead of us thinking that that's like a Virgin Virgo thing, why don't we just look at, okay, if they're actually Leo, what is Leo? King of the jungle. Like that's also very kingly, very regal qualities to have, right? We can take the same information and just shift our relationship to those archetypal, the symbolic patterns. That's all we have to do. But the problem and the thing that gets us all riled up is like tropical astrologers, it's as if we're saying like everything you believe is wrong. That's not at all what we're saying. We're saying you guys have been studying this stuff for a long time. You just need to shift. If you're going to say it's written in the stars, if you're going to make the statement, it's written in the stars, it better be fucking written in the stars. So that's, and it was great because when I shared, I made this whole story about this, trying to explain what the shift is, the tropical versus sidereal maps of the sky. And I got resounding response from people of like, oh my God, I just looked at my true sky chart and I feel so validated. I feel like this is so much more accurate than my last, than what I thought I was my whole life. Thank you. And then I got tropical astrologers that were basically like, you're a bitch. How dare you? And I'm like, I'm just spitting facts. Do what you will. I'm spitting facts. I'm just spitting facts here. That's all. So, we can meet in the middle. We can figure it out together. It's not about an us versus them. It's like, hey, why don't let's just acknowledge our physical reality a little bit, get out of our heads, right? Because Ptolemy wrote his interpretation based in the patriarchal male, mindset, which is based in individualism, right? Like the Greeks were individualists. And so a really good interpretation that I've heard is that tropical astrology, the Greek astrology, is applicable to our ego identities as self being separate from nature, right? As like the world revolves around me, how you view yourself as separate will follow the tropical astrology. Sidereal, which means of the stars, is based in the moving of all the celestial bodies and everything around us, not just the sun. It's not based in, tropical means, of the sun. Sidereal is based in, the ever-shifting reality around us. So therefore, our sidereal, our true sky astrology is us in relation to the all that is, as in separate. So often people, when they find out what their sidereal sun sign is, they're like, oh, that's how people tend to view me. That's who I am in relation to the whole. And it's true. People guessed I was a fire sign my whole life. And every time I'd be like, no, I'm a Taurus. They're like, what? So it wasn't true. I was an Aries and they could even feel it. So that's the biggest, for me, that has been the most unfortunate result of us using the tropical system, is that it has shifted us. It has moved us away from an elemental understanding of our reality, because we have a totally skewed image of what the elements are supposed to be like. And that is at the core of so much ancient knowledge, is understanding elemental wisdom. It's at the core of the Chinese medicine. I mean, it's at the core of all the West, and across the world, we had an understanding of what the elemental forces of nature do to the personality, to the spirit. And that's the biggest thing that, for me, the biggest problem with tropical astrology is that it's taken us out of alignment with the elements. Because if you think you're one element and you go through your whole life thinking that's what that element looks like, it's just bad information. You're not going to get an embodied understanding of what the elemental forces do in your interpersonal relationships, which is at the core of our experience, right?
So beautifully explained. And I remember
I love talking about this shit. Can you tell?
I do. I love how passionate you are about it. I remember the first time you shared this with me, I was like, what the fuck? I've never heard of any of this. I don't even know. Like, I had never even heard of sidereal astrology. Yep. It had never been something that I had come across. And hearing what you had to, it makes sense to me that the ego sign for myself would be Gemini, and that my actual sidereal chart would be Taurus. Yeah. And to realize that, like, how much grounding I actually need, like, it is so necessary for me to get the grounding. And if I don't get it, how egoically I'm living in the ethers. I'm living in this air sign. And it's like, wow, yes, they can be treated as separate. And what a beautiful opportunity for us to be able to appreciate both. They don't need to be, you can look at one and realize, okay, well, let's look at this as a paradigm for the ego, and the other for our soul. And it really comes back to exactly just nature, right? Like, if we're looking at the stars and we're actually acknowledging what's here for us in actual reality, physical materialism, like, let's look at what we have here.
Yep.
So good. Thank you so much. Thank you for all that you continue to open yourself up to, because I know spirit is just, you have such a deep relationship with spirit, and it's so seen and felt. Like, I've been in your presence. I've been able to witness it and feel it and sense it. And hearing the way that you articulate your experiences is just a true honor, a true honor.
Thank you. That's
Of
really sweet
course.
of you to say. Thank you.
Yeah. You're so, well, you're passionate, right?
Fire, baby.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. All right. So if you had one thing that you would like to share, one slice of wisdom from your life experience that feels juicy for you to share with folks, what would it be?
I don't know about juicy, but just simply learn to love yourself. That's it. That's like the core of all things. Just self-acceptance. Just keep doing the excavation. Excavate all the things that you're afraid to admit about yourself, afraid to say about yourself, and just love yourself every single little bit. Just like, yeah, that's it. That's it. That's real simple. Like that is the key to joy, happiness. The greatest spiritual fulfillment is just like honoring your divinity.
That's the nectar, right? Like that's when you get to that, when you honor your divinity, when you find that self-acceptance for self, amidst all of it, amidst all the dirty laundry and depths of your soul, like that's really where it comes into play, where you get to experience and see the sweetness of life and all that we get to just experience in this human experience. There's a lot.
Yep.
And how can people find you? How can they work with you?
My Instagram is HorseCloud. My business is HorseCloud Healing. I do, I'm an acupuncturist. I do craniosacral. I do like deep myofascial unwinding. And I practice out of Sisters. My core office is in Sisters. I also travel for work. I do home visits. I come to Portland once a month. I teach Qigong in person and virtually. I do I Ching readings, and hopefully within the next few years, I'll be doing Chinese astrology readings and some sidereal as well. So yeah, there's lots of ways to work with me. You can always DM me, email me, horsecloudhealing.com. Yeah.
You're the best. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your vulnerability and, again, just your clairvoyance and your ability to tap into your truth. It's so felt and seen and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was so good to see you.
So good to see you. So much love. Bye, babe.
Likewise.
Hey there. It's Danae again. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing your time and energy with me. If this podcast resonates, please like, subscribe, follow, and share if you're willing. Reviews help too. So if you're feeling the vibe, please leave a review where you can. Sending all the love. Peace.